Hello, everyone. Welcome to Yoga Upload. This is our live video chat for the month. Thanks for joining me today. I can see some people are already on the chat there. So if you are tuning in right now, just say hi and let me know if you can hear me, and just make sure that everything's okay for the broadcast before we dive right in. All right. Thanks for joining for the live video. And if you are watching the replay, thank you as well. I'll try to keep this at about 20 to 30 minutes. My goal is to not go beyond 30 minutes for sure. All right. What is the topic for the month? Today's video is about yoga and diet. So diet and nutrition within the context of yoga practice. And Veronica, I can hear you. Thanks for letting me know that. Good. So diet within the context of a yoga practice. A lot of you have brought this up in comment section of videos before, and I also get messages and emails from people just asking me about my own way of eating. Some of you asked about my nutrition plan, my meal plan, and things like that. So here we are. After much hesitation in doing this video, because it can be a little controversial for some, we're doing it right now. All right. What is today's video about, and what is it not about? Just so we're clear about what we're going to be talking about in the next 25 to 30 minutes. So today's video is about the relationship of yoga practice and diet and the way one eats. What does yoga philosophy or the yogic texts, what do they have to say about food and one's way of eating? And also, I will be sharing my own personal story about my journey throughout all the different lifestyles and ways of eating in the last 15, 20 years. All right. Agnieszka, you don't see? I think other people are able to see the video and hear it. So I think we're good. I'm just going to proceed. All right. So that's what today's video is about. What is today's video not about? This is not about me giving nutrition advice. I am not a professional nutrition coach or a registered dietitian. So this is not me dispensing meal plans and whatnot. And also, this is not some kind of, I don't want to say propaganda, but I'm not here to promote one lifestyle over another. I'm not here to bash certain lifestyles. So again, like I said, I'm just here to share my personal story and what I know about diet within the context of a yoga practice. So that's what we'll do. I'll talk about those things and my story and in the comments if you're watching live. All right, let's dive right in. A few months ago, I wrote a blog post. I also posted a video on it about yoga and diet. Like, should yogis be vegetarians or vegans, or can they eat meat? And let's use that as our jumping off point here. And in that blog post, I wrote about why it's important to talk about diet within the context of a yoga practice. Because if you've been practicing for a while, you've probably come across some yoga philosophy or yogic texts, and you've probably heard or read about the ethical principle called ahimsa. That's ahimsa, ahimsa. It's a Sanskrit term that translates as compassion or non-violence, non-harming. And it is a very important ethical principle in yoga. Maybe it's even the most important. It is the cornerstone of the yogic way of life. You'll read that in some yoga philosophy books. So I'm just going to read a little bit from my book here, The Path of the Yoga Sutras by Nikolai Bachman. And this was on my blog post as well. Ahimsa, which is the first of the 5 yamas, is the ethical practice of non-hurtfulness toward others and ourselves. It involves abstaining from intentionally inflicting pain on or killing other creatures in thought, word, or deed. Ahimsa also implies an attitude that strives to reduce harm. So, if you're practicing yoga and you're exploring yoga philosophy, you've come across ahimsa. And this is where the diet comes into play. You'll have 2 different camps of yogis here. Some yoga teachers, yoga masters, yoga practitioners, their interpretation of ahimsa is to refrain from harming or killing all creatures, humans and animals. And so with that interpretation, they choose to not consume meat or any other animal products. And their thinking there is it's harmful and violent to the animals, to ourselves, our health, and also to the health of the planet. So that's usually they usually cite ahimsa as their main reason for being vegetarian or vegan. Is because they don't want to harm other creatures. So that's one interpretation of that. There are, if you're familiar with the yoga school, Jivamukti Yoga, founded by Sharon Gannon and David Life, they are yoga teachers and also very vocal vegan activists. If you take their yoga teacher training, if you want to become a Jivamukti yoga teacher, the vegan philosophy is part of your training. And I think you're encouraged to be vegan while you're doing the training. And so I know someone who is a Jivamukti yoga teacher and is a vegan. So the philosophy and the yoga practice go hand in hand. If you go to their classes, they'll have a little talk usually at the beginning about veganism and that. So that's one. Now, on the other side, you have other yogis, yoga teachers and practitioners who are not vegetarians and vegans, not because they don't agree with ahimsa, they do, but their interpretation of ahimsa, of non-harming and non-violence, they think of it as you also need to think about yourself. If a vegan or vegetarian diet is not right for your health and you insist on doing it, then you are hurting and harming and being violent in a way to yourself. So include your own self in your circle of compassion and nonviolence. So that's their thinking on that. So you see now why it's kind of divisive. You will have some yogis from the vegetarian vegan camp who sort of judge others and say that you're not a real yogi if you're eating meat because you're not living by the principle of ahimsa, which is a very, very important part of the yoga way of life. But then other people are like, no, I also need to think about myself. Everyone has different health issues. Everyone has different nutritional needs. And just for some, vegan, vegetarian diets might not be right for everybody. And you have to consider a lot of factors before you decide on your diet, your way of eating. So you have those two kind of conflicting camps, but also I did a little bit of, I always read about other yoga teachers and I always do my research. And so you have other teachers who are pretty vocal about not being vegan and vegetarian. They've tried it for many years and it just didn't work out for them, for their health. And so they they had to adjust that towards a more omnivore type of diet, including a little bit of meat and fish and eggs and dairy in their diet. And so we're actually very vocal. I don't know if you follow Bad Yogi here on YouTube or look at her website, Erin Motz. She's talked about, she's not going to be a vegan or a vegetarian. And that's not the usual, yoga teacher vibe. And so she's kind of a rebel in that sense. And other people connect to that because they can't sustain a vegan diet, and they see Erin, who's a yoga teacher, and like, yeah, you can practice it, even without being vegan. One of my favorite yoga teachers, Sadie Nardini, who I followed for a long time and has influenced my teaching a lot, is also very, not very vocal, but she's mentioned, that she likes to eat steak and drink wine, and, that's what's right for her. And we should let go of our judgments of how other people eat as yogis. So those are the two within the context of like yoga philosophy. That's what you find in a lot of texts about diet is ahimsa. Another thing worth mentioning before I share my personal story is Ayurveda. It is considered the sister science of yoga. It's an ancient, like, holistic healing system that started in India. And with Ayurveda, the way they look at a person when they treat someone for any condition or when trying to prescribe a diet is to look at the individual constitution of the person. And there are like three main types, and then a combination of those three types. And then they prescribe what might be a good diet for that individual constitution. And it's not necessarily vegan and vegetarian. So they have foods that are considered like light and good and supportive of yoga practice, and there are foods that are considered to not be so supportive of yoga practice. So that's just a different, it's not my area of expertise. It's just a different system, a different way of looking at things. And again, it's considered the sister science of yoga, but even Ayurvedic practitioners do not exclusively push a vegan or a vegetarian diet. Again, it depends on the person's constitution. So there you go. All right. What do I do? I've talked about what other yoga teachers have said and their beliefs and their diets. Everyone's different. What do I do? Okay, just to give you a little context here. I'm from the Philippines. I grew up in the Philippines. It's a very meat-centric cuisine. Very meat-centric cuisine. And so I grew up like almost everybody else, eating meat and not really being aware of food choices and where the food comes from and things like that. So that's how I grew up. And around 2002, I want to say, I was 24. I came across this newspaper article. It was an interview with Alicia Silverstone, the actress Alicia Silverstone, who is a very passionate vegan. And so she was talking about in that article her reasons for being vegan: health reasons, ethical reasons, environmental reasons. And I think that was my very first encounter with all of those like arguments. I had no idea. And that started me on the path to just researching like, vegetarianism and veganism and things like that. And so 2002 was the year that I decided I wasn't going to eat meat anymore. It was going to be for my health. It was going to be for the animals, to not participate in cruelty to animals, and also for the environment, because these factory farms, slaughterhouses, and just the entire meat industry pollutes the environment, as I read in that article. And I gathered a lot of other, research materials as well. So that's when I first tried it, 2002. And in the Philippines at that time, I didn't know anyone else who was doing it. And it was just so difficult. And I did it, but I said, I think I still need to eat some fish and seafood. I just couldn't do it without that. So that first year, 2002 to 2003, I was a pescatarian, someone who still eats fish and seafood, but not other meat. And then 2003, I finally kind of made the plunge and became full vegetarian. I cut out the seafood, and I was fine. I was fine. It was hard. It was hard physically because it's hard to find things to eat, especially when you're going out or you're out with other people. Restaurants didn't really understand what I was doing. And also, yeah, hard socially. People make fun of you a lot for your choice, especially in where I'm from, because it's predominantly meat eating country. So I did that, and I know around 2005 I tried going full on vegan, but I didn't last a year. It was just too hard to cut out the dairy. And I think what was harder for me was also eliminating other non-food animal products like leather, and like I just I couldn't get rid of everything I owned or just find some alternatives and things like that. So I gave up and just went back to being vegetarian. And 2010, right before I moved here to the States, I was 32 years old when I moved here. 2010, I went back to being vegan. I had some support. I had a friend who was a vegan. The movement was kind of getting more popular in the Philippines, so there were places to get vegetarian food, and so I was able to do it with the support of my meat-eating husband, who is the most supportive person ever. Like, he would cook vegan food for me and have his own meals and stuff like that. So I moved to the States, and wow, it is so much easier to do it here. Everywhere you go to the grocery, you go to a restaurant, there are vegan options, and there were vegan restaurants in my neighborhood. So it was really easy, and there was no excuse for me to not keep doing it. And this is where I became really, really invested in vegan philosophy, and reading all the books and knowing all the statistics. But I tried to not be this judgy vegan that people are scared to hang out with. So I hope I wasn't that. Anyway, all right, let's fast forward to 2013, 14, maybe. We were having trouble conceiving, and I had like a few miscarriages, and we were going through fertility treatment. So it was a pretty challenging time in our life. And I started questioning, could my diet have anything to do with it? Because we did all the tests and everything was fine. And it was just all the other factors were okay. So I just started questioning, like, could it be my diet? And it's hard when you're a vegan to look at opposing points of view. Because I've done it for so long, you start identifying with it, you make it part of your identity. And so you don't want to look at opposing evidence because you feel like it's an attack on you. But because we were having a hard time with getting pregnant, I decided, all right, let me read things that oppose my paradigm. Because I've just been reading all vegan books and vegan authors, and they support what I already believe to be right. So I figured, let me look at the other camp, see what they're saying. And this is when I encountered a lot of these other kinds of diet, like high fat, low carb diet. I saw Lierre Keith's book. I hope I'm saying her name right, The Vegetarian Myth. And so I just started reading up and just looking at what they had to say, because for the longest time, I refused to look at that. And to be honest, it really got me curious. Am I missing something? Have I been so wrapped up in the vegan dogma that I'm not being objective and looking at evidence that's clear and just right there. So I want to say it was 2013 or 2014 that I started adding eggs and dairy back into my diet. And that was agonizing. My first taste of eggs, I was like, I haven't eaten eggs in 5 years. And because I've been vegan for 5 years at that point. Well, yeah, so maybe it was 2015. Yeah, 2015. And so I'm still not going to eat meat, but I'm going to maybe start eating some eggs and dairy and things of that nature. And so I was able to incorporate that after a while. And that was fine. I was feeling a little guilty. I wasn't telling my vegan friends that I was doing that because there's so much judgment from vegans towards former vegans. They hate the former vegans more than just meat eaters who were never vegan in the first place. It's like, how can you ever go back knowing what you know? And so I kind of kept it hidden a little bit there. But, after a while, I felt fine. I felt good. And then we did our fertility treatments. I got pregnant with Kieran. And I'm not saying that it was my change in diet that did that, because we did the IVF, the fertility treatment. So could it be that, the diet, combination of that? Or I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. So anyway, when I was pregnant, I was really, really sick and couldn't eat what I usually eat. And that's when Dave was like, maybe you should start eating meat while you're pregnant, just to see if you will respond to it, if you're going to be able to keep it down. Because I was throwing up every day, multiple times a day. And so I did. Again, after much agonizing, because at that point, 2016, I had been vegetarian. I've been meat-free for 14 years, almost 15 years. I had not touched meat at all, almost 15 years. So it's so hard to just abandon that and start eating meat again. And so I remember just my first day was kind of like, it's all right, but I don't know. I don't know if I can keep eating this. But I was pregnant and I couldn't eat other food. And so I started eating meat when I was pregnant. The nausea passed after the first trimester, first 4 months actually. And I just kept eating meat. And I felt okay. I felt okay with it. I didn't get sick. I didn't throw up or anything. And after I had the baby, I kept doing that. And what I found was that I felt better, especially after I started exploring a higher fat, low carb way of eating. And that's what really, it was a light bulb for me. And this is, if you're curious about my resources, I can list that in the comments later on, just the books I've read, YouTube channels that I follow, authors and doctors that I follow. And I've just, what happened was I increased the fat intake, right? And lowered the carbs dramatically. And I wouldn't get hungry. I'd be so satisfied. I could go for hours without eating. And I had so much energy and I felt really good. And I lost the baby weight pretty fast. I remember when I was a vegan and a vegetarian, I had to eat every 2 hours. I was hungry all the time. And looking back, I realized I was just eating so much sugar, so much carbs. I'm sure I could have done a better job as a vegan, but I was just eating a lot of packaged foods, And so I started just eating more whole foods, real foods, not a lot of carbs, very low sugar. And just, it was just a light bulb for me. It was life-changing. And I figured this could be a way that I eat for a long time that I can sustain and that I feel good in. So that's where I am right now. I'm pregnant with baby number 2, so I'm not as disciplined. I'm not as disciplined with a low carb. I'm not restricting the carbs too much, just to say I'm eating every few hours. I do try to eat healthy and more whole foods and less processed and junk food. We don't eat a lot of junk food anyway. We don't go to fast foods and things like that. So that's where I am. really enjoy the lower carb way of eating and good healthy fats, olive oil, avocados, salmon, nuts, things like that. So, and I eat a lot of salads as well. I'm still eating a lot of vegetables. And then we eat some meat, some fish. So that's what we're doing right now. It works for me and Dave and our family. Are we perfect? No, absolutely not. Sometimes we'll eat junk. And if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you know we were in Montreal just a week ago, and it was just like pastries and sugar, and all of these things every day for a week. So the goal is not perfection. The goal is to find something that works for you. Now, that's my story. Going back to yoga, I don't feel that going back to eating meat has made my yoga practice worse. I feel like it supports it. The way that when I was vegan, I felt fine most of the time too. And I felt that supported my practice. It's just that we can't be identified with a paradigm and refuse to look at opposing points of view. Don't make it part of your identity, whether you're a vegan, vegetarian, omnivore, or whatever it is. Look at it as a tool. It is what you do to support your own health and your own well-being. And I'm not here to judge anyone for how they eat. I don't know the state of their health, their nutritional needs, where they live, their food sources, so many factors to consider when deciding how to eat and what diet to adopt. So that's what I've learned, is to never say never. I remember when I was vegan, I was like, I'm doing the right thing. This is how I'm going to eat for the rest of my life. I'm not going to change my mind. But what I did not foresee was that life will bring on changes to your body, to your health, your situation, your family. Everything changes. And you must be willing to adapt to those changes and do what you need to do for your health and well-being. And so that's what I decided to do. That's what I'm doing right now. Will that change next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what circumstances will come about. I don't know what changes life will bring to me. But I do know that I will try to adapt accordingly and just see the state of my health and see what I need to do. So right now, this is what works for us. We're not vegetarians. We're not vegans. I feel like I'm coming out of the closet here because my friends have known me as a vegan for the longest time, as a vegetarian for the longest time. And I almost felt like I didn't want to tell people that I was eating meat again. And, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to hide. I'm just going to be honest with people. And hopefully this little bit of my story helps you. I'm not the expert. I do a lot of research, though. I read a lot, watch a lot. And if you want to know some of my resources, I can put that in the description below or the comments below later on. So let me know if you are interested in that. Yeah, there's so much judgment surrounding this topic, people in general, and especially yogis. Ironically, you'd think that we would not be judgmental, but we are sometimes. We're not perfect. We're human. And so thank you for listening. That's what I wanted to share with you. And I really hope you come away with, not identifying with a certain paradigm, not getting so stuck in something, not being so invested in being right that you don't want to look at other perspectives. So I'm glad that I looked at other perspectives, and I will continue to look at other perspectives and, gather information, be as informed as I possibly can. All right. I think we are nearing 30 minutes. So I want to be true to my promise here. That's our Yoga and diet. Let me just look real quick here. You got Olga, Agnieszka. Who else is here? Hong, Brian. I do yoga for my body and soul. I eat for my health. Absolutely. Don't want to harm animals, but do what you have to do. And there's a way to not participate so much in the cruelty of factory farming. So factory farming is, big industrial meat operations, and they are unnecessarily cruel to the animals and the people who work there in the environment. So you don't have to participate in that. Whenever you can afford it, you can go to just small farms or farmers markets where the operation is completely different, and it actually supports the planet. Again, not an expert on this. It's just what I've been reading. But there is a way to eat meat without supporting the cruelty of factory farming. So, Agnieszka, if you need to consume meat, there is a way to get it from better sources, more ethically sourced meats. There is a way to do that for sure. All right. Thanks for tuning in today. The next live video is going to be on November 5th. I'm going to do a live video every first Monday of the month. So if there are topics you'd like me to discuss for the next videos, please write that in the comments below as well. And make sure you're following me either on Facebook or Instagram or both, so you can get updated on the videos. All right. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining me. I went over a little bit. I'm seeing 31 minutes, 38 seconds, 39, 40. All right. I'm going to say bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.